The day my son kicked me out to make room for his wife's family was the same day my husband served me divorce papers. What they didn't expect was that I'd been planning my exit for years, and everything they love was still in my name. But let me start from the beginning 30 years ago, when I was young and foolish enough to believe that love meant sacrifice. I was 25 when I met Robert Thompson at a law firm Christmas party. He was charming, confident, and had this way of making me feel like I was the only woman in the room. I had just passed the bar exam and was working as a junior associate, finally living the dream I'd worked so hard for through college and law school. "You know what I love about you, Maggie?" Robert said on our third date, his hand covering mine across the candle-lit table. "You're smart, but you're not trying to prove anything to anyone. You'd make an incredible wife and mother." At the time, I thought it was the most romantic thing anyone had ever said to me. We married 8 months later. Robert was starting his own consulting business, and his credit score was, well, let's just say it had seen better days. Student loans, a few missed credit card payments during his startup phase. Nothing serious, but enough to make getting a mortgage nearly impossible. "Honey, would you mind if we put the house in your name?" he asked, his arm around my shoulders as we looked at the beautiful colonial on Maple Street. "Just temporarily until my credit recovers. You know how much I want to provide for our future family." I signed without hesitation. My inheritance from my grandmother had just come through, enough for a substantial down payment. It felt right, building our future together with money from the woman who had raised me to be strong and independent. If only she could have seen what I was about to give up. The business was next. "Partnership papers need a co-signer with good credit," Robert explained, sliding the documents across our kitchen table. "It's just a formality, sweetheart. You trust me, don't you?" Of course I trusted him. I loved him. When David was born 2 years later, Robert convinced me to take extended leave from the firm. "The baby needs his mother," he said, bouncing our red-faced newborn in his arms. "Besides, my business is really taking off. We don't need 2 incomes." Extended leave became permanent when the firm offered my position to someone else. Robert's business was doing well, and honestly, I loved being home with David. I threw myself into motherhood with the same passion I'd once reserved for litigation. I organized playgroups, researched the best schools, drove David to soccer practice and piano lessons. But Robert was traveling more and more. "Building the client base," he'd explain, kissing my forehead before wheeling his suitcase out the door. Sometimes he'd be gone for weeks. I managed everything: the house, the finances, David's schedule, even Robert's business bookkeeping when he was on the road. I told myself this was partnership. This was what marriage looked like. I was contributing, just differently than I'd planned. The bank accounts gradually shifted to my name, too. "Better tax advantages," Robert's accountant explained, "and your credit score keeps improving ours." I signed the papers, transferred my remaining inheritance into our joint investments, and watched our net worth grow. I was proud of what we'd built together. Robert's business thrived. We owned our home outright by the time David was 15, and our investment portfolio grew steadily. When people asked what I did, I'd smile and say, "I'm a full-time mom and CFO of the Thompson household." I thought I was lucky. I thought we were a team. David grew up to be everything I'd hoped: smart, kind, ambitious. He landed a great job at a tech company in the city, and when he brought Jessica home 3 years ago, I welcomed her with open arms. She was sweet, professional, and clearly adored my son. "I always wanted a daughter," I told Jessica during one of our early lunches together. "I'm so glad David found you." She smiled, but there was something in her eyes I couldn't quite read, something that should have warned me. The engagement was beautiful. The wedding even more so. I paid for most of it, of course. The venue, the flowers, Jessica's dress. "It's what mothers do," I told Robert when he questioned the expense. "Besides, it's our money. Our son deserves the best." But something shifted after the wedding. David's calls became less frequent. When they did visit, Jessica would look around our house with this calculating expression, commenting on the wasted space and how inefficient our layout was. You know, Mrs. Thompson, she said one Sunday dinner, this house is really too big for just 2 people. Have you ever considered downsizing? I laughed it off. This is our family home, Jessica, where we raised David, where I hope to spoil grandchildren someday. Her smile was tight. Of course. I just meant, for efficiency. That was 6 months ago. Now, as I stood in my living room watching Jessica's parents examine my furniture like they were appraising it for sale, I finally understood what that calculating look had meant. Mom, we need to talk. David's voice was different, harder somehow, like he was delivering a business presentation rather than speaking to the woman who'd raised him. I set down the tea tray I'd prepared for Jessica's parents. Of course, honey. What's on your mind? Jessica's parents are going to be staying with us for an extended visit. Her father's having some health issues, and they need to be closer to his doctors here. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Of course, they're welcome to stay in the guest room for as long as they need. David exchanged a look with Jessica, who was standing in the doorway with her arms crossed. Actually, Mom, they need more space than that. Jessica thinks it would be better if you moved to the guest house out back, just temporarily. The guest house? The 400-square-foot converted garage where we stored Christmas decorations and David's old sports equipment. David, this is my home. I understand they need space, but surely we can work something else out. Actually, Jessica stepped forward, her voice sickeningly sweet. I've been thinking about this for a while. You're all alone in this big house, and it's not really practical. Maybe it's time you found your own place, somewhere more suitable for a woman your age. A woman my age. As if 65 meant I belonged in some assisted living facility. Jessica, I appreciate your concern, but... Mom. David's voice cut through my protest. Jessica's right. You're making them uncomfortable. They feel like they're intruding on your space, and honestly, it's creating tension in my marriage. I stared at my son, the boy I'd rocked to sleep, taught to ride a bike, helped with homework every night for 12 years, the young man I'd supported through college, celebrated with at graduation, cried happy tears for at his wedding. David, this is my home. I'm not making anyone uncomfortable in my own home. Well, that's kind of the thing, Mom. He looked at his feet, unable to meet my eyes. Jessica and I have been talking, and we think it's time for some changes. We want to start our own family here, make new memories. Having you around all the time, it's hard to feel like adults, My heart stopped. Having me around... You're always here, Mom. Always hovering, always offering advice. Jessica needs space to feel like this is her home, too. Jessica nodded emphatically. It's nothing personal, Mrs. Thompson. It's just that David and I need our independence. And honestly, this house has so much potential if we could just modernize it a bit. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Modernize it? The kitchen could be completely opened up, Jessica continued, her eyes bright with excitement. And this living room is so cramped with all this old furniture. We could really make it spectacular. Old furniture. The antique pieces I'd inherited from my grandmother, the coffee table David had made in shop class, the rocking chair where I'd nursed him as a baby. Jessica, those pieces have sentimental value. Mom, please. David finally looked at me, and I barely recognized the cold stranger behind his eyes. Don't make this harder than it has to be. We're asking nicely. Asking nicely. As if they were doing me a favor by kicking me out of my own home. I stood there for a long moment looking around the living room where I'd hosted countless birthday parties, Christmas mornings, homework sessions, and heart-to-heart talks. The walls held 30 years of memories, 30 years of my life. I need some time to think about this, I said quietly. There's not much to think about, Mom. Jessica's parents arrive tomorrow. Tomorrow? They'd already made the decision. This conversation wasn't a discussion. It was a notification. I excused myself and walked upstairs to my bedroom, my legs shaky. I sat on the bed where Robert and I had brought David home from the hospital, where I'd held my son during thunderstorms, where I'd cried myself to sleep during those long business trips when I felt like a single mother. The bedroom door opened, and for a moment I thought David had come to apologize, to tell me he'd made a mistake. It was Robert. "Maggie, we need to talk." His voice was nervous, different from the confident tone he'd used that morning when he kissed my cheek and said he'd be home for dinner. "Robert, thank God. David wants me to move out for Jessica's parents. Can you believe—" "Maggie, stop." He was holding an envelope, a thick, official-looking envelope. "Sit down." I remained standing. "What's that?" "Divorce papers." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" "I've been wanting to talk to you about this for months, but the timing never seemed right. And then today, with David's situation, I realized there's never going to be a right time." "Robert, what are you talking about? We've been married for 30 years. "Exactly, 30 years, Maggie. We're different people now. I'm different. I want different things." I sank onto the bed, the envelope between us like a bomb. "What different things?" He couldn't meet my eyes. "I've met someone. Her name is Linda. She makes me feel young again, Maggie. She makes me remember who I used to be before all the responsibilities and routines." "Who you used to be?" My voice was barely a whisper. "You mean before me? Before David? Before the family we built together? It's not about before you. It's about who I am now, who I want to be going forward." He set the envelope on the nightstand. "Linda understands my ambitions. She supports my dreams." "I supported your dreams. I gave up my career for your dreams." "And I'm grateful for that, Maggie, I really am. But that was a long time ago. We've grown apart. You have to admit that." Grown apart? As if our marriage was a garden I'd simply forgotten to tend, rather than a partnership where I'd done all the watering while he enjoyed the shade. "Is that why you want this house?" I asked, pieces clicking together. "For Linda? The house, the assets. We'll split everything fairly. The lawyers will work it all out." Lawyers. He'd already consulted lawyers. "How long?" My voice was steady now, cold. "How long have you been planning this?" "Maggie, how long, Robert?" 6 months, maybe 8. 8 months. While I'd been planning David's wedding, Robert had been planning his exit. While I'd been welcoming Jessica into our family, my husband had been choosing another woman over me. "Does David know?" Robert shifted uncomfortably. "We thought it would be easier if you heard it from me first." "We." David knew. My son knew his father was leaving me, and he'd still asked me to move out of my own home. They'd coordinated this. They'd planned this together. I stood up slowly, my legs somehow steady again. "I need you to leave." "Maggie, I know this is a shock." "Leave. Now." Robert hesitated at the door. "For what it's worth, I am sorry. You're a good woman, Maggie. You'll find someone who appreciates you." After 30 years of marriage, after sacrificing my career, my independence, my identity, his parting gift was telling me I was good enough for someone else to appreciate. I sat alone in my bedroom as the sun set, listening to the sounds of my family dismantling my life downstairs, Jessica's excited voice as she rearranged furniture, David's laughter as he helped move boxes, Robert's car starting in the driveway. For the first time in 30 years, I was truly alone in the house I'd built, the life I'd created, the family I'd nurtured. And that's when the strangest thing happened. As I sat there in the growing darkness, surrounded by the wreckage of my carefully constructed world, I felt something I hadn't experienced in decades. Relief. Not happiness. That would come later. Not peace. That was still months away. But relief. The exhausting performance of being the perfect wife and mother was finally over. The pretense that I mattered to these people, that my sacrifices were valued, that my presence was wanted, all of it could finally stop. I walked to my dresser and pulled out the fireproof box where I kept our important documents: marriage certificate, birth certificates, insurance policies. And underneath them all, the papers I'd signed so trustingly over the years: property deeds, business partnership agreements, bank account authorizations, investment portfolios, all with my name, all legally mine. For 30 years, I'd been so focused on being a good wife and mother that I'd forgotten I was also a woman who'd once passed the bar exam, a woman who'd managed a household budget that grew into a substantial portfolio, a woman who'd been smart enough to put everything in her own name when her husband's credit was poor. I spread the papers across my bed and really looked at them for the first time in years. Really read them with the analytical mind I'd trained in law school and then buried under 3 decades of domestic life. What I found changed everything. The next morning, I didn't pack for the guest house. I didn't make breakfast for Jessica's parents, who'd arrived during the night and were already making themselves comfortable in my living room. I didn't play the role of the displaced mother, grateful for whatever scraps of space they'd allow me. Instead, I made a phone call to my old law school roommate, Sarah, who now ran her own practice. "Sarah, it's Margaret Thompson. I need a lawyer." "Margaret Thompson? I haven't heard from you in years." Sarah's voice was warm through the phone, but I could hear the surprise underneath. "What's going on?" I took a deep breath, looking down at the papers spread across my bed. "I need legal advice, Sarah. My husband filed for divorce yesterday, and my son wants me out of my house. But I think there's something they don't understand about what they're asking for." There was a pause. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "Everything is in my name, Sarah. The house, the business, the investment accounts, everything." "Jesus, Maggie, how much are we talking about?" I did quick math in my head, adding up property values, business equity, and investment balances. Probably close to $2 million. The silence on the other end stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. "Sarah? I'm here." "Maggie, I need you to gather every document you can find and come to my office. Today. Don't sign anything, don't agree to anything, and don't tell anyone you've called me. They think I'm just going to quietly disappear into some little apartment and let them have everything." "Well," Sarah's voice had taken on the sharp edge I remembered from our law school days, "they thought wrong." 2 hours later, I sat in Sarah's downtown office watching her flip through 30 years of documents with increasing amazement. "Maggie, this is incredible. You own the house outright. Your name only on the deed. The business partnership agreement makes you a 50% owner with Robert. But since you've been handling the books, and he's been listed as traveling consultant, you've actually got controlling interest based on active management." She looked up at me over her reading glasses. "Did you know this?" I signed the papers, but I never really thought about what they meant. Robert always handled the legal side of things. Clearly, he didn't handle it very well. From a legal standpoint, Robert can file for divorce, but he's going to be shocked when he realizes what he's actually entitled to. Sarah leaned back in her chair. "As for your son asking you to leave your own house, well, that's rich. He has no legal standing whatsoever." I felt something shift inside my chest, like a door opening after being locked for years. What are my options? Legally, you hold all the cards. You could freeze joint accounts, maintain control of the house, force the sale of business assets. But Maggie, I have to ask, what do you actually want here? I stared out the window at the city street below, watching people hurry past with their own lives, their own problems, their own families. For the first time in 30 years, I had to think about what I wanted, not what was expected of me. "I want my life back," I said finally. "I want to stop being treated like I'm invisible, like my 30 years of sacrifice meant nothing. I want them to understand that I wasn't just some weak woman they could discard when it was convenient." Sarah smiled, and I recognized the expression from our moot court days. "Then let's get your life back." Over the next week, I moved through my days like an actress playing a role. I smiled politely at Jessica's parents, who had taken over my living room with their medical equipment and prescription bottles. I listened to Jessica redesign my kitchen over morning coffee, nodding as she described knocking out walls and replacing my grandmother's cabinets with something more modern. "The whole house needs updating," Jessica told her mother in Mandarin, apparently forgetting that I'd taken 2 years of Chinese in college. "Once we get her moved out, we can really make this place beautiful." I sipped my coffee and said nothing. Robert moved into the guest bedroom, citing the need to give me space to process the divorce. He was unusually helpful around the house, probably guilt-motivated, carrying boxes and offering to help me sort through my things. "Take your time with the packing, Maggie," he said, setting a box of my books by the door. "I know this is hard." "I'm not in any hurry," I replied, which was true, though not for the reasons he imagined. David avoided me entirely, which was probably for the best. I wasn't ready to have that conversation yet. Meanwhile, Sarah and I worked quietly behind the scenes. She helped me understand exactly what I owned, what I controlled, and what my rights were. The picture that emerged was stunning. "Your grandmother's inheritance didn't just buy the house," Sarah explained during one of our afternoon meetings. "You've been reinvesting the returns for decades. The current investment portfolio is worth about $800,000, and it's all in your name." "What about Robert's business?" "That's where it gets interesting. Legally, you're a 50% partner, but you've been doing the books, managing client relationships during his travels, and your money funded the initial startup costs. A good lawyer could argue for controlling interest, especially since you've been the one maintaining business relationships." I thought about all those late nights balancing accounts while Robert was traveling, all the client calls I'd handled, all the business decisions I'd helped make. I thought I was just being a supportive wife. Apparently, I'd been building a case for ownership. "And the house? Yours. Completely. Robert has no legal claim to it whatsoever." That evening, I sat in my kitchen, watching Jessica's mother rearrange my spice cabinet. She was organizing everything alphabetically, throwing away spices she deemed too old or not useful. "Mrs. Thompson," Jessica appeared in the doorway. "I hope you don't mind, but my mother likes to cook, and she needs the kitchen organized in a way that makes sense. My grandmother's vintage spice tins were in the trash can, tins I'd used for 20 years that held memories of holiday baking and Sunday dinners." "Of course," I said mildly. "Whatever makes her comfortable." Jessica beamed. "I'm so glad you understand. David was worried you might be difficult about the changes." Difficult. After 30 years of accommodating everyone else's needs, the possibility of me being difficult had worried my son. "Have you found a place yet?" Jessica continued. "I've been looking online, and there are some really nice senior communities about 20 minutes from here. They have activities, meal plans, transportation services. It might be perfect for you." Senior communities. She was planning to warehouse me with other discarded mothers and wives, somewhere I could live out my remaining years playing bingo and not bothering anyone important. "I'm still exploring options," I said. "Well, don't take too long. My parents really need their space, and this transition is hard on everyone." After she left, I retrieved my grandmother's spice tins from the trash. They were dented but salvageable, like a lot of things in my life. That night, Robert found me in the living room going through photo albums. "Those are nice memories," he said, sitting on the opposite end of the couch. "They are." I turned a page, revealing pictures of David's high school graduation. "Remember how proud we were?" "Of course I do." His voice was softer than it had been in months. "Maggie, I want you to know that this divorce isn't about anything you did wrong. You've been a wonderful wife and mother." I looked at him. Really looked at him. For the first time in years, when had he gotten so gray? When had those lines appeared around his eyes? When had he started looking like a man who was running out of time and panicking about it? "Robert, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "When you think about the last 30 years, what do you see?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I see a lot of hard work. Building the business, raising David, maintaining this house. I see routine, responsibility, the same conversations every day. What do you think I see? He stopped, maybe realizing for the first time that he'd never considered my perspective. I don't know. I see a woman who gave up her career to support her husband's dreams. I see someone who raised a child largely alone while her husband traveled. I see a person who managed finances, maintained a home, built a life around other people's needs. I close the photo album. I see 30 years of my life that apparently meant so little to my family that they could ask me to pack it all up and disappear in a single conversation. Robert looked uncomfortable. It's not like that, Maggie. Isn't it? You filed for divorce without discussing our problems. David asked me to leave without considering alternatives. Jessica is redesigning my house while I'm still living in it. I stood up, the photo album clutched against my chest. I think it's exactly like that. I left him sitting alone with the memories we'd made together, the life we'd built, the family we'd raised. Let him figure out what those 30 years meant to him. The next morning, I made my decision. I called Sarah. I'm ready to proceed. You're sure? I'm sure. Okay, give me 24 hours to prepare the paperwork. In the meantime, don't change your behavior. Act normal. Don't give them any warning. What about Jessica's parents? What about them? It's your house, Maggie. You can invite whoever you want to stay, and you can ask anyone to leave. It was such a simple concept. My house, my rules. But it felt revolutionary after years of accommodating everyone else's comfort. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in months. I went shopping, not for groceries or household supplies, but for me. I bought new clothes, got my hair cut and colored, treated myself to lunch at the nice restaurant downtown where Robert and I used to go for anniversaries. You look wonderful, the hostess said as she seated me by the window. Special occasion? You could say that, I replied. I'm celebrating a new beginning. When I got home, Jessica was in the living room with fabric samples, planning new curtains. Oh, good, you're back, she said without looking up. I wanted to ask about these family photos on the mantle. Obviously, we'll want to put up our own pictures, but I wasn't sure what you wanted to do with these. Our wedding photo, David's baby pictures, 30 years of Christmas mornings and birthday parties and family vacations. I'll take care of the photos, I said calmly. Great. And I measured the bedrooms upstairs. My parents could really use the master suite. The bathroom is so much better, and my father's mobility isn't what it used to be. My bedroom, where I'd spent my wedding night, where I'd brought David home from the hospital, where I'd cried myself to sleep through lonely years of Robert's business trips. Jessica, we need to talk. Something in my tone made her look up from her fabric samples. Is everything okay? That depends on your definition of okay. I sat down across from her, my hands folded in my lap. I've been thinking about this situation and I realize there's been a misunderstanding. What kind of misunderstanding? About whose house this is? Jessica's smile faltered slightly. I don't understand. This house is in my name, only my name. It was purchased with my inheritance money, and I am the sole legal owner. The fabric samples slipped from Jessica's hands. But you're getting divorced. Doesn't that mean? It means Robert is entitled to whatever a court decides is fair compensation for 30 years of marriage. It doesn't mean he owns this house, and it certainly doesn't mean you do. Jessica stared at me like I'd started speaking a foreign language. Mrs. Thompson, I think there's been some confusion. David said a lot of things. But David doesn't own this house either. I do. Are you saying we can't stay here? I smiled, the same polite smile I'd been giving her for 3 years. I'm saying that if you want to stay here, you need to ask me, nicely, and you need to respect the fact that this is my home, with my belongings and my rules. I need to call David. You do that. She practically ran upstairs, and within minutes I could hear her rapid conversation in Mandarin with David. Then louder voices and David's heavy footsteps on the stairs. Mom, what the hell is going on? Jessica says you're trying to kick them out. I looked at my son, my beautiful, intelligent, ungrateful son, and felt the last threads of my maternal guilt snap. I'm not trying to do anything, David. I'm explaining reality. This is my house. I've allowed Jessica's parents to stay as guests, but that's what they are. Guests in my home. Our home, Mom. This has been our family home for 30 years. My home, David. Check the deed. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I saw uncertainty in his eyes. Mom, you can't be serious. Where are we supposed to go? I imagine you'll figure something out. You're an intelligent, successful man with a good job and a wife. I have faith in your problem-solving abilities. This is insane. Dad said you were being reasonable about the divorce. Your father filed for divorce without discussing our problems with me. He has a girlfriend he's been seeing for 8 months, and you coordinated with him to ask me to move out of my own house. I stood up, and for the first time in months, I felt tall. None of that sounds particularly reasonable to me. David's face went white. Mom, I didn't know about Dad's girlfriend, I swear. But you did know about the divorce, and you still thought it was a good time to ask me to leave my home. We just thought. Jessica's parents need help, and you rattling around this big house alone, it seemed like... I'm like what, David? Like the perfect opportunity to get rid of the inconvenient mother? That's not fair. 30 years of sacrifice isn't fair either, but here we are. Jessica appeared in the doorway, her phone pressed to her ear. My parents want to know if they should start looking for a hotel. I looked at her parents, elderly and confused, caught in the middle of their daughter's miscalculation. They'd done nothing wrong except trust that their daughter understood the situation. Your parents are welcome to stay until they've made other arrangements, I said. But Jessica, you need to understand something. This is my house, these are my belongings, and I make the decisions here. If you can't accept that, then yes, you should start looking for other accommodations. The room was silent except for the ticking of my grandmother's clock on the mantel. The clock Jessica had probably planned to replace with something more modern. David looked at his wife, then back at me. Mom, please, can't we work something out? I'm not the one who needs to work something out, son. You asked me to leave my own home. Your wife has been planning renovations to my house without consulting me. Your father served me divorce papers while you were making me homeless. I picked up my purse from the side table. I'm going out for dinner. When I come back, I expect this house to be treated with the respect it deserves. Where are you going? I paused at the front door of my house, and smiled. I'm going anywhere I want, because for the first time in 30 years, I can. As I drove away, I could see them through the living room window. David, Jessica, and her parents, all standing in my living room, probably trying to figure out how their perfectly orchestrated plan had just collapsed around them. I had dinner at the nice Italian place by the lake, ordered wine with my meal, and sat by the window watching the sunset. My phone buzzed constantly, texts from David, calls from Robert, even a voicemail from Jessica. I ignored them all. For the first time in 3 decades, I was eating dinner alone, and I'd never felt less lonely in my life.